Test, 1 2, test. Check, test, 1 2, test 1 2, test. Check, test, 1 2, 1 1 1 2. Check, test, 1 2.
Hi, everyone. How are y'all doing this afternoon? Good? All right, yes. Are y'all pumped for the youth panel? You should be. Yes, yes. We're here for the youth. So thank you all so much for coming. I'm super excited to be here, to be a partner of AI and of WWF. My name is Diamond Spratling. I am the founder and executive director for Girl Plus Environments. We are a national nonprofit that was really created to better educate, engage, and most importantly, better engage, empower, and mobilize more Black and brown women to get in these climate and environmental justice spaces, right? Because even when we look around the room today, there's so little of us in these spaces, and making sure that when we are in these spaces that we feel empowered to be a part of the solutions, to be a part of the conversations, and to really just voice our opinions and the things that we are seeing within our communities. So I really wanted to do this youth panel today to really just highlight all of the amazing things that I've been seeing on the ground. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to give the opportunity for these panelists to get up on stage and share a little bit more about all the amazing work that they've been doing. So first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce our panelists. So we have Mayor Eric Simmons, Mayor of Greenville, who's with us today. We can go ahead and give him a round of applause. Woo. Love our mayors. We also have Ariel King, who is an environmental justice educator and strategist. We have Saima Rasul, who is a sustainability consultant at KPMG. And last but not least, we also have Daniela Makaya, who is an environmental children's book author and student at Yale University. Awesome. That's all that I have, and I'm going to pass it on to our amazing moderator.
You know, we'll be remiss if we did not pause today to recognize, salute, and appreciate Girl Plus Environment, Diamond, for her initiative and what she's doing in this space, in this time and in this moment. Let's give her a round of applause. We also have 3 other women who are also doing amazing work. We have Sama, Ariel, and Daniela. And I'm just really pleased to be among superstars. And I'm a firm believer that the planet's most natural prized possessions are our youth and what they can do in this space, in this moment, in time, in environment, in climate. And, you know, if I had to put it into words, I would just simply say that you all are indeed our superstars. So let's give them a round of applause. And Beyonce has a song where she talks about these alien superstars. Hit it, DJ.
Do not be alarmed, remain calm. Do not attempt to leave the dance floor. The DJ booth is conducting a troubleshoot test of the entire system.
I'm one of one. I'm number one. I'm the only one. Don't even waste your time trying to compete with me. No one else in this world can think like me. I'm twisted, how contradicted. Keep him addicted. Lies on his lips, I lick it. Unique.
Thank you so much, DJ. All right, before we jump into these questions, I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to talk about the amazing work that you all are doing in your spaces, in this climate space. Specifically, I'd love to hear about how you got into this work, how you're addressing climate justice, and a bit about the communities you're accountable to. We'll start with Ariel, and then we will go to Sama, and then Daniela. Ariel.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. As was mentioned, I'm an environmental justice educator and strategist, working primarily at the intersection of art, climate, and culture. I got into this work very young. I initially was just really interested in helping others. I think my environmental justice journey really stems from a recognition that you cannot separate protection of planet and protection of people. And I grew up in a neighborhood that was overburdened with pollution, and I saw the impacts of environmental injustice and the disparate impacts that creates on Black and brown communities and low-income communities. And so before I even had the language to describe that as environmental injustice or a recognition of the environmental justice movement, I was seeing it firsthand in my neighborhood. So when I got to college, I recognized that I wanted to pursue a path that was committed to advocating for people on the planet. So in undergrad, I did environmental and sustainability studies as my major. And during that time, I created my senior thesis on the Flint, Michigan water crisis, and that was in 2016, so really in the thick of it. Not to say that the residents of Flint are still not being harmed and inflicted by this crisis today, but there was a new recognition, and it really created a reckoning in the United States, and there was a lot of investment going into Flint, especially in 2016 when it was officially declared an emergency by the federal government. So I went to law school. After that, I pursued a master's in environmental law and policy and a law degree focused on environmental justice and civil rights, and I have always had the intention of helping others and using my law degree to interpret the language of the law and making it more accessible to those who don't understand that language, to create self-determination for communities that are most harmed by environmental hazards. So that has looked like many different things. I've worked at an environmental legal think tank. I've helped develop a environmental justice focused organization, Amplifying Black Women. I host a podcast all about positive climate solutions and a bunch of other stuff. So I'll stop there, but I would say that primarily my work is working to advance and create opportunities for storytelling to advance policy and shift solutions and resources.
All right, thank you so much for that. Sama?
Thank you. So my name's Saima Rasul. So my day job is a sustainability consultant at KPMG. So what that means is we help some of the world's largest businesses and financial services firms on their climate and sustainability journeys. Think about some of the biggest polluters in the world, including oil and gas majors, and then also funds with $500 billion worth of assets under management. And then on the side of that, I'm part of a KPMG-led network called Leaders 2050. It started off in the UK firm. We have 2,500 members. So it's for everybody, both KPMG and non-KPMG, mainly young professionals that are interested in sustainability. And it's all about encouraging young professionals, firstly, to get those networks and connections, but secondly, to encourage the more senior people in the organizations to listen to them so that their companies can become a lot more greener. And then I'm also a part of something called 2 Billion Strong, which is a charity aimed at increasing the diversity in sort of the climate space. So it's mainly focused at representing Muslims in climate action. And then I'm also the ESG representative for something called the Social Mobility Foundation ESG Working Group. So the Social Mobility Foundation is a UK-based charity, and it specialises in getting disadvantaged young people jobs, particularly ESG jobs. So by disadvantage, it's typically people who are like me, first-generation university graduates. So our parents didn't go to university, we did, and it's like, first time in a corporate world, where do we even start? So there's a lot of that. And on the back of the whole Leaders 2050 KPMG stuff, alongside hosting loads of events, we've gone global. So now we're in various firms across the world. So yeah, I'm looking at James because he's now the Australia's co-chair. He's in the audience. And I also co-led 2 reports. So the first one was called Diversity for Net Zero, because definitely saw, as Diamond mentioned, particularly in the UK, what I've seen is climate change is seen as a very white middle-class issue. And by middle-class, it just means, people who are pretty privileged, and it's not really sort of looking at the more disadvantaged side of it. And sadly, climate change does disproportionately affect those that are more disadvantaged. So that report was all about it provided companies with a framework on how they can increase ID in their climate solutions. And then the second thing that came out earlier this year is called Net Zero Influencers, and it talks all about how young professionals can influence their companies, and it's actually got a framework for both senior leaders and young leaders to use to increase representation of young folk in the workplace. So yeah, feel free to Google either one.
Thank you so much. Daniela.
Is this working? Yes, perfect. Well, hi everyone. My name is Daniela Macaya. Before I begin, I want to truly thank Girl Plus Environment and Diamond for this space, as well as America is All In. I'm really grateful, and I'm not speaking just for myself, just the youth worldwide and women. You know, these spaces are very important and unfortunately not as common as you said. So just really grateful to be here and honored. Just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Costa Rica, but currently I am a student at Yale University, majoring in environmental studies. So I am in New Haven right now, and I'm a junior, so I have a year and a half left now. I'm very passionate about environmental education and storytelling in this role of solving climate change. In my past initiatives, I have merged my creative side and artistic side with environmental education. And I have created a few initiatives. One of them was a children's book that I wrote and illustrated. I have it right here. It's called Desechada in Spanish, or Throw It Away in English. And it was published by UNICEF last year, and as well as a university publisher in Costa Rica. So it's jointly published and is currently in over 60 libraries in Costa Rica. And it just really details the journey of a plastic bag through Costa Rica, and tells the story of how this can be a full circle moment and come back in your food and in your plates, which is an idea that a lot of young kids don't know about. So this is just one of my projects. And as well, I have previously led a national storm drain painting contest where we engaged youth to paint storm drains to educate on where the ocean truly starts and its sources of contamination. And it was funded by the Rotary Club, which is right across this pavilion. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my initiatives. And currently at Yale, I'm more focused on raising awareness on the importance of reducing energy consumption. So I co-founded the Yale Student Energy Efficiency Program, where we educate students on how to reduce their energy consumption, as well as the Student Energy Consulting Program, where we train students to become energy consultants for the Office of Sustainability. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. I'm super excited to be here, and thank you very much.
All right. And you all can see there's hope in climate, and there's hope in our youth with these three young women. Let's give them a round of applause for their opening remarks and what they're doing and the work that they continue to do. You know, in this space and time, we often hear about the issues at hand regarding climate. We hear about the problems at hand, but I can truly say I'm overjoyed and privileged to be on this panel with you all to see some of the solutions that our youth are engaged in and also putting in play. What false solutions to addressing climate change have you all seen? And I'll start with you, Salma.
Yeah, so I suppose from a corporate side, I've definitely seen youth washing in action when it comes to, for example, things like company boards or, you know, senior leadership committees. And they'll come to sort of the young professionals, if they even have a young professionals network or group, and they'll say, we'd love to see, you know, we'd love to get your thoughts on this new thing we're going to do for employees. And then we'll give our opinion, and the thing comes out and you just don't see it. But then you definitely see in the report, oh, we heard it from our young professionals. This is sort of other things that I've seen in my research for my report is alongside youth washing, it's also just not connecting young professionals in an organization. So, you know, typically you might have like 10,000 people in like a London office, yet nobody, like the young professionals just aren't connected to each other. So they're not able to sort of have the networks and those families or work families. So I think those are two things that companies should definitely be wary of.
Okay. All right, Danielle.
Yeah, that was great. Something I want to talk about is the ostrich method. When people you dig a hole in the ground and stick your head and pretend that climate change is not an issue, doesn't exist, or it does exist, but it's not man-made, so there's nothing that we can do about it. And we really, this is just an excuse to continue business as usual. It's become really clear, and I'm sure all of us know, climate change is absolutely real and very urgent to tackle. And these group of people, we can't just turn a blind side and ignore them and let them do their own thing, because this is a problem that involves everyone, and we need everyone on board. So leaving out that group of people is not part of the solution as well. And this effect stems from a lack of knowledge a lot of the times, or being overwhelmed with how big this problem is. So this is, again, where education can play an integral role.
Okay, thank you so much, Ariel.
Yeah, I believe that one of the most unreasonable solutions to climate is investing funds in the wrong places. I find that fossil fuel subsidies last year were like in the billions. The fact that we're literally giving taxpayer dollars to the industry that is harming and killing our planet is mind-blowing to me. And similarly, even like philanthropic dollars, there's so few philanthropic dollars that are going to climate solutions. And of those philanthropic dollars, it's like less than 10%. And of that, it's less than 5% that are going to youth-led organizations, Black-led, BIPOC in general led organizations. Whereas we understand that the solutions, so many of the solutions already exist and they just need to be scaled up. And so, what would that look like if we were actually investing funds into the appropriate sources? And I also recognize that even with really exciting initiatives like the Loss and Damages Fund, things like that, there are just tremendous barriers to access those resources. And so some of the communities that need those resources the most aren't able to access them, which creates challenges and limits the ability and the effectiveness of these options. And so I believe that changing that would require actually communicating with those who are on the ground, grassroots organizations, people who are being most affected by climate change, and making sure that they're very intentionally involved in decision-making processes, and are providing guidance on how these funds can and should be allocated.
Okay, thank you. So you also provided solutions. Daniela, instead of these false solutions, what other solutions do you think we need to be focused on instead, or need more of?
So there's no magic bullet to address climate change. It's really a mindset and a culture. And to achieve that, you need education, you need awareness, we need broad dialogue, goodwill, education. And I hope that the technicalities are worked, but the solution is not just from a couple of technocrats. You also need the softer skills like communication and dialogue, and a whole of society approach that involves all stakeholders, especially the youth. And having these types of dialogues like we're having right now is part of the solution. Being here at the COP is part of the solution. So there's no one thing, but it involves everyone. So
youth, women, and gender.
Youth, yeah, exactly.
That's right. Keep going.
Exactly. So we need education at all levels, and also older generations are currently the decision makers, but younger ones are the ones that will be the leaders in the future. So it's not just education in one level; it's in all levels.
Okay. Thank you so much. How have you seen policies like the IRA or the IIJA positively impact communities? Start with you now. Daniela.
With me?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to speak as a university student that still has not entered the workforce. So I'm really excited, and a big impact for the youth and university students is the growing job market, especially in clean energy. So the new generation wants to find jobs that have a future, and these are green jobs. Reconverting the economy to the green economy is a lot of jobs, but it requires a lot of green jobs. So we are especially excited for this growing field, and I think that it will enlist a lot of new youth that perhaps previously were not interested in energy or environmental topics. And linked to that is the American Climate Corps, which is the training initiative that's ensuring that young people have access to the skill-based training for these types of jobs. So this will definitely grow the clean energy workforce and create jobs in the climate and environmental sectors for the youth. So this is an extremely, extremely important initiative that young people are very excited about and really grateful that is happening.
Okay. Ariel?
Sure. I mean, I think climate jobs is probably one of the most exciting things, and just access to be able to transition appliances to more sustainable ones, and providing subsidies for solar panels on houses. I think there are a lot of initiatives that are really exciting that come out of these pieces of legislation, these decisions. I also recognize that it creates levels of potential growth for there are projections that are indicating that if we are staying at the current rate, then, even with the IRA, we are going to create tremendous harm and increase oil production and fossil fuel production. And so I think with all of this funding, we also need to be very intentionally figuring out how to phase out fossil fuels, and contributing to the construction of fossil fuel infrastructure. I'm thinking about the Willow Project. I'm thinking about all of the LNG projects that are happening in the U.S. right now. I mean, that is the complete opposite of what's necessary right now. So I believe that despite all the really wonderful and exciting things that are happening with things like the IRA, we also have to be very realistic, and we have to think about what else needs to happen, what needs to accompany these things for them to be truly successful.
Okay, thank you. So this is a big one, and I want to loop myself in with you all on this because I'm on a youth panel. So how can older generations support the youth and all of us, because I'm going to treat myself as a youth on this panel. So how can older generations help us in this fight on climate change? Starting with you, Sama.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing is actually listening to the youth and making that space. So, again, from a corporate setting, I preach a lot about something called shadow boards. So that's having the youth perspectives integrated into the governance of a company, so that the most senior people, the presidents, the CEO of a company, are actually listening to their youth. And that way, they've got their ears to the ground, they actually understand what's going on. And at the end of the day, you have to remember that those generations are the ones that are going to inherit the world left by today's generation. So the youth have are uniquely placed to go ahead and give their opinions on that. So yeah.
Yes, Daniela?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And to add on to that, I mean, let's not ignore it. The older generation has the experience that the youth does not have yet. So we want to learn from you. We want to learn what you've done in the past, what works, what doesn't work. We don't want to repeat mistakes in the future when we're in power. So that's one big ask. At the same time, we're also charting new territory. Sometimes there is no experience, and we need to learn together. This needs to be a joint effort. We need intergenerational discussion, collaboration, and decision-making. The youth oftentimes is siloed to have conversations just with each other, and that happens a lot. So we ask that you put us together. We want to be at the table.
Okay. Ariel?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I have in my notes, let's not make every generation have to reinvent the wheel because we don't talk to each other. I believe that we would benefit most from being able to receive insights, knowledge, contacts, and funding from the older generations. And so I believe that communication is so important for creating real tangible action and figuring out next steps in a really intentional way. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Because believe it or not, I listen to Lil Bootsy, Lil Wayne, and
Yes.
Taylor Swift. I listen to all of that.
Yes,
So,
I believe that.
I mean,
No, I do.
even when we were outside, I talked about
Yes.
some of the #1 hip hop songs on the
Yes.
Billboard charts. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I feel a part of you,
Yes. Okay.
especially in this fight for climate and
Yes.
the environment.
And that's a great point. And that's something else I wrote. Just we have to remember that we're sharing a love and a common goal, right? I feel like a lot of times there's this issue of like, oh, like this generation communicates in this way and it's so hard to talk to them. Like, I think all of that is so real and so valid, but I believe that at its core, we all care about the future. We all care about having a livable planet, and we all are doing this or should be doing this from a place of love. And so we, I think, have to really like break through or work through the communication barriers and identify that common shared interest, and that's in protecting this planet.
Yeah, and you know, if a tornado comes into a community, it doesn't separate youth between
Right.
seniors.
No,
Or
exactly. Yeah.
if a flood happens, it's not putting youth on one side
Sure.
of the community and seniors on the other side. It's hitting an entire community.
Definitely.
And so we have to continue to work together collectively on this fight for climate. And I think that segues into the last question. You know, a lot of folks don't have the self-efficacy to address climate. How can we get those individuals all in? We're an American All In Pavilion, but how can we get those individuals all in like you three are engaged in climate and environment? Starting with you, Ariel.
Sure. I mean, I tell people all the time, not everyone has to be a climate expert, right? Like all three of us on this panel, we have dedicated our educational journeys and our careers to the pursuit of a climate and environmental education. However, we need everyone to be involved in that. And I tell people all the time, you don't need a degree to be an environmentalist. You don't. And so I believe that we need a lot of people who are trying. We need a lot of people who care. And I believe that we have to share, and the people who are experts, we have to use our expertise to explain and provide insights and information to meet people where they're at, right? And make sure that we are not creating silos and making it clear that environmentalism is for everyone, and reimagining what that looks and feels like. I know that when I started in the environmental space, and even as a kid, I really didn't see a lot of environmentalists who looked like me, especially, or I should say, I didn't see them publicized. In my neighborhood, I saw them a lot. But the people in my neighborhood weren't the ones who even identified themselves as environmentalists because they didn't see themselves in the movement. So I believe that we as a climate community have to really intentionally reimagine what environmentalism looks like and what the environmental community encompasses.
All right, Sama.
I would say there's this huge problem when it comes to climate action, and that's sort of accessibility in terms of language, communications. I think there's so much jargon thrown around. We get net zero, 1.5 degrees, all this, all that. The average person walking down the street, they don't get it, particularly when, for example, in the UK, on your energy bills, there is an added extra that you pay for net zero. So to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, the government charges that as a tax. You've got a single mother who can barely make it to the end of the week, and somehow you're trying to tell them, oh, by the way, you have to pay for net zero. And they're like, forget the end of the world, I'm trying to make it to the end of the week and you're charging me, right? So, I mean, sadly, that's when we do really need to put it out there, that why is this an everyone issue? Well, it's because, sadly, those who are disadvantaged are far more affected by climate action, and we really need to put that out there and try and just sort of more, just be way better with communication is what I would say, because as you mentioned, it just creates so many silos. Just looking from a UK perspective, when I think about my friends and family who aren't sort of into the climate action world, they're just like, oh my God, it's like all these protesters and when's it going to stop? And it's so inconvenient because the messaging isn't going out there about what happens when this planet essentially heats up. So yeah.
Thank you. Daniela.
Yeah, I want to highlight both of those points and add on that I think storytelling is a really big way that you can easily communicate to large groups of people and educate them that no one is exempt from this issue. Everyone is going to get affected, and storytelling is a way that you can really break down what is happening, loop them in, give them solutions, or inspire them to be a part of this mission. this problem is really daunting at times and seems really huge, and you can feel really small, and how can you make an impact, but also sharing and highlighting other activists' stories, or how you in your specific field that you might think is not related to the environment can be involved in a way that is unconventional, because what we need is to be unconventional and think outside the box. So, for example, with my children's book, I was teaching kids how plastic can end up back in your plates. And I mean, the reactions that I got every time I read it, they were like, oh my God, like, how is that possible? And then there was a whole bottom-up approach. They would go home and tell their parents, and then the parents would write to me and like, oh my gosh, like, my kid is like making me like, throw away all my plastic, or not, say no at the grocery store when you're getting a plastic bag. So it really like captures large groups of audiences, and it can spread throughout generations, as I saw personally. So yeah, that would be my storytelling.
Thank you. I'm hearing education, 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 education.
Yes.
Education, 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 education. And that is horizontally and vertically.
Right.
Because, you mentioned, the youth, but, you can start from a bottom-up approach, but also folks at the top, like the seniors, need to be educated as well.
Yeah.
And when we talk about vertical, cross governments and cross various former governments, whether it's local, subnational, and so I really agree with that, and we heard it from our youth. We're going to open the floor up for questions right now from the audience. We'll take about 1 or 2 questions if we have any questions from the audience at this time. Yes, sir. Okay, we get a mic to you. All right.
Hi. Also, this was such an amazing panel, and thank you for spreading.
Thank you for being here as well.
voice. My question is, look, for young people and for older generations, I think what you three have done is incredible. And in terms of just some inspiration for everyone, what is each of your three's why? Because you've done so many challenging things that other youth and older people have not done. So I just want to know, like, what is your why? What is the integral part of why you've been able to achieve these things?
Okay, great question. We'll start with Selma.
Okay, so I'll give you a very honest answer. So when I first went into the whole green world and got a job in sort of green energy and whatnot, it was frankly because I thought, oh, the market's booming, I'll get promotions, I'll upskill myself fast. It was very much a career move. Then the Pakistan floods happened. So I'm of Kashmiri Pakistan heritage. So a third of, the country that my parents took me back to every year and made sure I knew the national language and all of that stuff was underwater. And I thought, okay, that's terrible. It's devastating, right? And then I read an article that said Pakistan's climate crisis of child marriage. And I was like, wait, what's this? I found out that climate change in Pakistan and countries like Bangladesh too directly leads to an increase in child brides in that country, because sadly the families lose everything, so they sell their daughters off. And that is such a terrible topic, but then that's where it really hit me that when we sort of get those plastic carrier bags, when we pollute the planet, we don't realize we're taking away a young child's future in a different part of the country. And I sort of just learned more about the just transition and how what we do in the West, and I say the West because we are some of the most polluting countries, right? It's these women's carbon footprints are tiny, or people in those nations are tiny, yet we're the ones, we pollute the planet and we ruin their lives without realizing it, I suppose. So yeah, that was like the reason why I then ended up going into 2 Billion Strong, actually, and that's where 2 Billion Strong was made, when the Bangladesh and Pakistan floods happened. And yeah, so that's like my personal sort of why.
All right. Daniela.
Yeah, so my why started in Costa Rica, I would say, growing up in a country that has a lot of progressive conservation policies and is doing relatively well, like very well actually, protecting different parts of the country and setting limits, areas off limit. And regardless of this, when I would go to the beach, I would still see the effects of climate change and plastic in our oceans, or decreasing populations of leatherback turtles coming out to the beach. And it made me realize that even though Costa Rica is doing so well, if other countries aren't, if we're not all doing this together, it ripples down.
That's right.
So it made me feel first very, very shocked at a young age. I started learning more about this. And at first I felt very powerless. Like, what can I do? At the time, I don't know, I was like 15 and really learning more and reading and all these documentaries saying about how the world is going to end and we're doomed. And I did not know what to do. From a young age, I have always really liked to paint and be really creative. So I started out just doing a series of environmental paintings, and I exhibited it at my school, and it really got a lot of traction, and it educated through just a painting, and it said more than words and scientific papers could. So I realized that I could educate through an unconventional way, through creativity and through art, and that led me to write a children's book that I had never done before, and it was a challenge that I made for myself during the COVID quarantine. I was in my room, and I was like, what do I do now? So I just sat down, and I just started drawing and writing, and it was able to get published, which I'm super grateful for. But yeah, my message is really to just inspire everyone that no matter what your background is, what your skills are, everyone has something to do and something to impact for this problem. So yeah, that was my why.
All right, thank you so much, Ariel. Tell us about your why.
Sure. So I shared a little bit about it earlier, but I would say that in a general sense, my why is that I don't want another generation to endure what I saw growing up as a kid. I grew up in a food desert. I grew up very close to like multiple different types of pollution. Half the kids I went to school with had severe asthma. You would go into the nurse's office after lunch and you'd see like half the class is like hooked up to machines, right? And so like seeing that every day and like just and being in a nature-deprived area, like not having access to green spaces, like all of these things, I couldn't possibly imagine seeing another generation have to deal with that. And so that's my main why. And from that has stemmed the idea that, oh, like the people in my neighborhood who are being most impacted, they don't even see themselves in this movement. They don't understand the value of them being involved in climate action because they're just so burdened with everything else, including environmental hazards. And so, yeah, what does it look like to reimagine that? What does it look like to meet people where they're at and talk about things in a very accessible way through storytelling and through integrating art and different solutions? And so, yeah, that's my why.
Well, there you have it. Girl plus Environment, Series 1. The sequel will continue in COP 28 and COP 20 and 30. So we will continue this. But this is indeed a wonderful panel of power to the youth, amplifying youth-led solutions to addressing climate change. I'll close before we bring Diamond up with Girl plus Environment and say this. Being born a man or a woman is a matter of chance. Being born a man or a woman that makes a difference is a matter of choice. These three women have made a choice to make a difference in their communities. Give them a round of applause. And so now we'll bring the wonderful Diamond, Girl plus Environment, who too made a choice to do the right thing and impact her environment and the world. Let's give Diamond a round of applause as she comes up for closing remarks.
I mean, I don't know how I follow up after that. I mean, what should I say? Again, I just want to thank everyone for being here for this panel, and thank you so much to these panelists here. And I'm going to give them another round of applause because they were so amazing today. Thank you all for your passion, for choosing to do this work. I mean, being in this space, in this sector, it's a lot. It's very stressful, but we get up every single day and we do this work because we care so much about it. We care about human rights. We care about access and equity and being able to have an equitable and sustainable future. And I think that that's what these ladies have been doing every day in their work. And I'm very appreciative and just grateful for everything that they've been doing. And also to America is All In and WWF for just even giving us this platform and being able to be in this space. I mean, I say this all the time. It's such a privilege for us to be here in this COP space. There's so many Black and brown women at home in my community in Atlanta who cannot be here. And it sucks, right? But I'm happy to be here to be support them and to be a voice and be a translator of what's going on in the ground in Atlanta, but also what's going on here, because these decisions impact us every single day and they impact us disproportionately. So it's so critical that we continue to push and make sure that we are creating spaces that are safe for more Black and brown people to be here and to continue to do the work. So thank you all for being here, and yeah, hope to stay connected.